Well, good morning. How's everyone? You good? Welcome to the second session this morning, actually. It's been a little crazy back there, so we're a few minutes behind. My name is Bryan Osborne. I'm from Answers in Genesis. Just really joined the ministry full-time around a year and a half ago. Came on as a speaker and writer. Before that, I taught for 13 years in a public high school down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I taught, what's interesting is what I taught. I taught Bible history in a public high school for 13 years, and I just kind of loved doing it. It was a blessing, and only left because I knew God was kind of drawing me to this ministry. And if you don't, actually, let me ask, who's familiar with Ken Ham, Answers in Genesis, the Creation Museum, all right, so a little over half. Okay, so some of you know, we are what we call really a biblical authority apologetics ministry, equipping Christians to defend God's word where it's being attacked today, so we can share the gospel boldness and not fall away from our faith like so many are. If you come to the museum, we got all kinds of stuff going on at the museum, but really what we do in the museum is we walk you through biblical history using what we call the 7 C's of biblical history. And the first 4, creation, corruption, catastrophe, confusion, that's really Genesis 1 to 11. That's the geological, astronomical, anthropological history of the universe. That's really the foundation to the next 3 C's, which is Christ, cross, and consummation, the gospel that's based in that history. And as we walk you through those 7 C's, we're answering the skeptical questions of this age, like what about the dinosaurs, like last session? What about rock layers and fossils, or radiometric dating, so forth and so on? We're answering those questions for a key reason, to show people a very important truth, that this word is true. You can trust it from cover to cover. It's right when it talks about history, and it's right when it talks about salvation. Why? Because it is the very word of God. That's why. And bottom line is this, I don't know if you recognize this, but God's word is under attack in our day and age. It's under assault in our culture. And guys, that's nothing new. The Bible's been under attack since Genesis chapter 3, when the devil said to Eve, "Did God really say?" He was trying to get her to question God's word, ultimately, hopefully, to doubt and reject God's word, which is exactly what she did. And 2 Corinthians 11:3 warns us, he's going to use the same attack on you and on me. He's going to try to get you to doubt God's word. Did God really say that? Can you trust what it says about history and dinosaurs and rock layers? Can you trust the first part? Because he understands this very simple truth. If he can get you to doubt chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, if he can get you to doubt the book of Genesis, it won't be long before you doubt the whole book of John. I mean, if you can't believe Genesis 1:1, why would you trust John 3:16? If you can't trust what this book says about history, why trust what it says about salvation? And that's where the attack is occurring today. The devil's trying to get people to doubt that history, to undermine the gospel that's based in that history. And that's why we need to be prepared to give answers for our faith, not to win debates, but to show God's word is true, stand firm on his word, and then share the gospel with boldness. That's what this is all about. And that's why we need answers. Answers to questions like, do animals evolve? Which is our topic for this morning. In order to answer that question, you have to define the word evolution because it has multiple meanings. But according to our culture, no, evolution, even our pop culture, evolution is an absolute fact. Watch this clip from a show called Friends, kind of talking about this very thing.
Or evolution.
Whoa. But you don't believe in evolution?
Nah, not really.
You don't believe in evolution?
I don't know. It's just, monkeys, Darwin, it's a nice story. I just think it's a little too easy.
Too easy? The process of every living thing on this planet evolving over millions of years from single-celled organisms is too easy?
Yeah, I just don't buy it.
Excuse me. Evolution is not for you to buy, Phoebe. Evolution is scientific fact, like the air we breathe, like gravity.
All right, so is that so? Is evolution like air or gravity? Well, again, it depends on what you mean by the word evolution because it has many different meanings, and only one of those meanings is actually scientific, that is observable, testable. The scientific method says anything that you can actually observe, test, and repeat it. That is what scientific actually means. There's only one meaning to the word evolution, that is observable, testable, repeatable, and falsifiable. All the other meanings to the word are believed by faith. And so what we're going to do here during this session is kind of break this word down. We're going to look at the different meanings to the word evolution, starting with the first type you'll need for the origin of everything, leading up finally to man, and talk about what do we actually observe as opposed to what is believed by faith. And so the first type of evolution you will need will be something called cosmic evolution, the origin of time, space, and matter. And according to the secular scientists, it all began with a Big Bang. You guys heard about the Big Bang? The idea that nothing exploded and produced everything, right? That's what the theory basically says. Like this textbook says around 18 to 20 billion years ago. Nowadays they say around 14.5, but anyway. It says all the matter in the universe. Quick little side note here. Do you realize that the word universe comes from two Latin words? Uni, which means single, and verse, spoken sentence. Do you guys realize that we live in a single spoken sentence? And God said, let there be. It's a cool little side note if you think about it later on. Leave that for your pastor if he wants it. But anyway, it says all the matter in the universe was concentrated to a very small region that was smaller than a period on this page. And then for some unknown reason, that region exploded, and that is called the Big Bang. But wait, where did this singularity come from, if you want to use the technical jargon? Where did the dot come from? Well, Discover Magazine 2002, where did it all come from? And if you see the little marble-sized object there, they say this is the actual size of universe right after birth. And they know that for sure because they have digital photographs of when it took place, right? Because they were there. But no, they say the actual size. And they say, where did it come from? Well, below it says, the universe burst into something from absolutely nothing. Zero, nada. And as it got bigger, it became filled with even more stuff that came from absolutely nowhere. That is the general idea. To give you a nice, well-rounded understanding of this idea of the Big Bang, let me show you a compilation of clips I put together from National Geographic, the History Channel, Discovery Channel, even has the illustrious Dr. Stephen Hawking talking about this idea of nothing exploding and producing everything.
For the first time in human history, we are able to describe how this world we see around us came into being. Our theories take us back to the time when the universe was born, but people always want to know what came before. There have been various ideas, but for me, the most attractive is that the universe was spontaneously created out of absolutely nothing.
Less than a billionth of a second after the Big Bang, a bubble much smaller than a fraction of an atom forms. This is the universe.
And then, something happened, triggering the most colossal explosion in history. In a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second, the universe grew from the size of that tiny point to something billions of miles across. This colossal blast created everything. All the matter we see in the universe today.
And so, of course, no one was actually there besides God himself, so you have to believe that by faith. So you can either choose to believe in the beginning God, like the Bible says, or in the beginning nothing, like man says. And you see, ultimately, this is a battle of two religions. It's not science versus religion, but two different religious interpretations of the same evidence. And guys, ultimately, I hope you hear this, that this issue of origins, age of the earth, dinosaurs, rock layers, guys, is ultimately a worldview issue. And ultimately, there are only two worldviews. Either you start with God's word as your starting point, or you start with man's word. Those are the only two true religions at a foundational level. Because ultimately, all scientists, whether they're biblical or secular, guys, they got the same stuff, the same rock layers and the same fossils, the same radioisotopes. But you see, they interpret those things differently and get different conclusions about their origin based on their different starting assumptions, based on their different worldviews. And if you start with the wrong assumptions, guess what you more than likely get? Wrong answers. It reminds me of the story of a little boy who went to the doctor's office with his mom, and they were waiting in the waiting room. And he looked across the room and saw a very pregnant lady. So he went over to her like little boys do, and he said, "Excuse me, miss, why is your belly so big?" To which she responded, "Well, I'm having a baby." He looked at her confused and said, "And the baby's in your stomach?" She said, "Oh, yeah." And he said, "Well, is he a good baby?" She said, "Oh, yeah, he's a real good baby." To which the boy responded in horror, Well, then why did you eat them? Silly, I know, but you get the idea. Wrong assumptions, wrong conclusions. And friends, secular scientists have reached some really wrong conclusions about certain things, like the age of the earth and the Big Bang and the rock layers and the fossils, because they're starting with the wrong assumptions based on the foundation of man's word rather than starting from God's word. But if you want to choose to elevate man's word over God's word and believe in the Big Bang, then you got some pretty tough questions to answer. Questions like, where did the matter come from? Secular scientists have no good ideas. Where did the laws of nature come from? Things like laws of gravity, laws of physics and chemistry and mathematics, where did those laws come from? And by the way, why aren't they changing? If evolution is true and everything changes over time, why don't the laws of nature gradually change over time? I mean, why hasn't gravity changed? Why don't some people weigh 10 pounds more than they used to? Well, they might, but it's not because gravity changed, right? That's nothing to do with that. But why aren't they changing if the evolution is true? Or where did the energy come from to run this place? And again, secular scientists have no good ideas. The reason is because the idea of the Big Bang violates one of the most fundamental laws in science, something called the first law of thermodynamics. And one of the basic tenets of this law is that we have never seen something come from nothing. Never. And if something is a law in science, it means we have never observed anything to the contrary. Never. And I cannot imagine a bigger violation of that law than the idea of nothing exploding and producing everything. Evolution violates laws of science. Actually, we're going to see a lot of scientific laws that evolution breaks as we go through. But the mantra of the evolutionists will be, yeah, we know it violates laws, but nature found a way. Like in Jurassic Park, life finds a way. Somehow nature did it. We don't know how, but somehow nature did it. Nature, in a sense, becomes their God. That's what atheism is, in a sense. So nature did somehow, and then after the cosmos burst into something from absolutely nothing, then you need the stars and planets to form. Then you need stellar and planetary evolution. We'll start with the stars first. Do you guys realize that no one has actually seen a star form? I could show you like 100 quotes like this one from secular scientists who would say something like this. The silent embarrassment of modern astrophysics is that we don't know how even a single one of these stars managed to form. We've never actually seen the process take place. Now, the popular hypothesis for today goes something like this. Well, there are these big gas and dust clouds out in space, and they begin to spin and flatten out. And as they flatten out, the gas and the dust get squeezed in together. It causes a lot of friction, which causes fusion. In the middle, a star is born, and then the gas and dust around the star collapses and forms planets around the star. It's called the nebula hypothesis. And there are big gas and dust clouds out in space. No one argues that. They're gorgeous. They're called nebula, and they're usually light years across. But guys, here's the thing. As we watch these clouds in the present, they are always, 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 always expanding on their own. They're never contracting on their own. Why? You do the simple math. The pressure of the gas pushing out is over 1,000,000 times greater than the force of gravity trying to draw it in. And we all know that gas can be very powerful, but there's a joke there I won't touch at all. But you get the idea. Gas is always pushing out. And even though we've never seen a star actually form, it's been estimated there's enough of them out there that you could own 11 trillion to yourselves. Each person on planet Earth, 11 trillion stars. And that's just the ones we know about. We don't know about the ones we don't know about. That's a lot of stars. And to get that many stars, even in 20 billion years, we should see 6 million forming every minute. We should see 100,000 forming every second. We can't see one. But we do see them blow up from time to time. It's called a nova or a supernova. It's a really big explosion. And on average, a star blows up around every 30 years. So if we've been around for billions of years, then we should see millions of supernova remnants. How many do we actually observe? Well, we actually see 205. That's around 6,000 to 7,000 years worth of supernova remnants. I think the Bible has something to say in regards to that. And then we need planetary evolution. We need the origin of planets. Again, we've never seen a planet actually form. But according to the evolutionist hypothesis, if they're correct, then all the planets and the sun should be spinning in the same direction due to numerous laws in science. And they are not. We know that Venus, Uranus, and Pluto are rotating backwards. And by the way, if all the planets in the sun are made from the same gas and the same dust, then why are they so different from each other? Different in size and scope and sequence and atmosphere. They're different in the elemental compositions, chemistry, makeup, so forth and so on. And by the way, according to the evolutionary model, they expected the sun to be rotating very quickly in the middle, and the orbit's rotating fairly slowly in comparison. What we actually observe is the opposite. The sun rotates fairly slowly, and the planets orbit fairly quickly. And it's perfect just the way it is. You see, since the sun rotates fairly slowly, it does not fling its matter into the solar system. Therefore, we don't get burned alive. And I hear that's a good thing, right? And since we orbit around the sun very quickly, we don't get sucked in by the sun's gravitational pull. Again, we don't get burned alive. Again, it's a good thing. It's perfect just the way it is. But it's a real conundrum for the evolutionists. But they say it happened somehow. And then after that somehow happened, then that leads us to organic evolution. This is the idea of getting life from non-life. And after over 60 or 70 years of study, the evolutionists are absolutely no closer. Paul Davies, a well-recognized expert in this field, not a creationist, says this: nobody knows how a mixture of lifeless chemicals spontaneously organize themselves into the first living cell. No one has even a good clue. As a matter of fact, it is such a problem for the evolutionists that many are buying now into the idea of something called panspermia, or directed panspermia. Have you heard about this? You probably know what it is and just don't know that you know what it is. You've seen it at least a few times in a bunch of different movies. It's the idea that aliens came and seeded life onto this planet, and it evolved from there. That's panspermia. Nice little example of this. I'll show you a clip from the movie Expelled that's narrated by Ben Stein. You guys remember Ben Stein? Anybody know who that is? Anyone? Bueller? That's an older reference, more for our teachers. All right, yeah. Anyway, no, Ben Stein, he's interviewing a guy named Richard Dawkins, who is a staunch evolutionary biologist and atheist. He's what I like to call an atheist evangelist. He feels it's his purpose in life to let you know that you have real no purpose in life. All right, that's really kind of what he does for a living. And he's being interviewed here by Ben Stein, and he's a smart guy, but it's not a head issue. This is a heart issue. And listen to what he says in regards to this idea of, panspermia and life.
I put an argument in the book.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right, how did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anyone.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto, perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe.
Well,
but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
And you see, here's the thing about that man. Is he smart? Yes, got a PhD, he's a smart fellow. But guys, this is not a head issue, it is a heart issue. Let me put it to you like this. Why is he okay with the idea of aliens creating life and not God? Bottom line is this: because if aliens created life, then we are not morally accountable to them. But if God made us, he owns us, he sets the rules, we are accountable to him, and sinful man does not like that idea. And they'll make up any excuse plausible to try to reject that idea so they can be unaccountable and do what they want. Romans 1 says that the unrighteous suppress the truth in their sin. They don't want there to be a God. That's what we all are in our sinful state. It's not a head issue, it's a heart issue. And actually, this idea of life from non-life violates, one of the most fundamental laws in science, something called the law of biogenesis. This law states that life only comes from life. We have never seen a rock give birth to anything. If you do, run away. It's not good. It's not natural, all right? That's what this law states. Evolution breaks this scientific law. And by the way, a little side note there, that's my son around 22 months ago, just for the record. But anyway. And inside of that life, we find tons of genetic information called DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, just rolls right off the tongue. But this genetic information is staggering. There's so much of it on multiple levels, actually. And there's a law in science called the second law of information, which says information always comes from a mind. Now, once you have it, you can make copies of it, but the origin always starts from a mind. And evolution suggests that all the information inside living organisms came from inanimate matter. Violates the second law of information. And then we'll move on from there. Somehow it happened according to the naturalist, the atheist, the evolutionist. And then it leads us to the next type of evolution, something some people call macroevolution. And guys, this is what most people think of when you say the word evolution. It's the idea that one kind of animal can change into a whole different kind of animal. It's the idea that we all come from a common ancestor. And from that ancestor, all life evolved from there. It's the idea that dinosaurs did not go extinct, but like many evolutionists today suggest, they evolved into birds. It's the idea that humans and apes today share a common ape-like ancestor from which we all evolved. Sometimes called molecules to man evolution. My favorite definition is the one at the bottom there. It's the goo to you via the zoo theory. We go from goo to you, how? Through the zoo. Fish, amphibians, reptiles, and finally mammals. If you can just remember farm, that's the suggested order of evolution. It's what Darwin ultimately concluded in his book, The Origin of Species. By the way, he made some decent observations, nothing new, mind you, but some decent observations, but got some really bad conclusions. He said it's a truly wonderful fact that all plants and all animals throughout all space and time should be related to each other. So ultimately, according to macroevolution, we're related to birds and to monkeys, even to bananas and even nuts, which you might be thinking that explains some of my family members, and it might, all right, but what the idea teaches. That's what the textbooks teach. This textbook, by the way, not just public school, but also many Christian schools and homeschooling curriculum, will say something like this: you are an animal and share a common heritage with earthworms. Were you feeling depressed when you came in this morning? I'm just here to lift you guys up, just encourage you. You're just an earthworm, all right? That's all it is. And so let's kind of talk about what have we seen thus far, this idea of evolution. What's been proposed from the Big Bang up to this point? What's the suggested theory thus far? Well, around 14 billion years ago, nothing exploded and produced everything. And from the chaos of an explosion, you get the orderliness of the galaxies and stars, solar system, so forth and so on, which goes against many other laws of science as well. We don't have time for those. But somehow the earth formed as a hot molten mass around 4.5 billion years ago. Opposite to what the Bible says, God made the earth covered by water. But then it rained on the rocks for millions of years, and the rocks came alive in that organic soup around 3.5 billion years ago. So maybe this was Grandpa, we're not sure. And then that rock evolved onward and upward to things like bacteria, and finally into humans, but we were a lot of stuff in between. Discover Magazine 2004. Was this your ancestor? A sea sponge right here. And then it says definitively inside, this is your ancestor. To which I can only respond, I'm just saying, right? If they're going to throw up a softball like that, I got to hit it, all right? Absolutely, yeah, no. And then somehow man evolved on the scene around 3 million years ago. So problems with this idea of macroevolution, there's a bunch. Here's the first one. First of all, we don't see that happening today, do we? All right? We don't see the frog or the frog change into the crocodile, the frog. We don't see the literal bird dog, all right, or the banana fish, or the great white horse, or the lion-a-roo. Squirrellosaurus or whatever, all right? We don't see one kind change into a whole different kind. Now, if there was an evolutionist up here with me, and some of you may be thinking, but yeah, Brian, you're being silly. We don't see it happening today because evolution happens too slowly. Well, I would still argue we should still see some sort of transitioning happening. That should be fairly obvious, but okay, I'll give it to you. Then where should the evidence be for this supposed changes over time? It should be in the rock record, right? We should find literally billions upon billions, if not trillions upon trillions, of these intermediate link fossils in the fossil record, of things changing from one kind into another over millions and millions of years. There should be trillions of these. And guys, they're not there. There's only a handful the evolutionists are willing to argue over, but those are easily debunked. They're just not there. To give you a great example of this, let me show you a quote from a guy named Dr. Colin Patterson. He was the senior paleontologist at the British Museum of Natural History. And this guy is a staunch evolutionist, has access to one of the largest fossil collections in the entire world. And he wrote a book on evolution. But here was the catch. In his book, he included no examples of evolutionary transitions in his book, fossil or living. None. And so someone recognized that. They wrote him a letter and said, "Sir, I read your book. I know you're an evolutionist. You have access to all these fossils. Why did you not include any examples of transitions in your book?" This is what he said in response, very honest. He said, "I fully agree with your comments on the lack of evolutionary transitions in my book. If I knew of any, fossil or living, I would have certainly included them. I will lay it on the line. There's not one such fossil," as they're just not there. And the evidence is so sparse for them that some evolutionists, not all, but some, will go to great lengths to make the evidence fit their preconceived ideas. Have you guys heard of Lucy? Australopithecines afarensis just means southern ape, so a few of you have. Lucy is supposedly one of the best evidences that people evolved from ape-like critters. But here was the problem. When they found Lucy's bones, they only found around, actually in total, 25% of her bones. And all her bones were very chimp-like, all the way around, including her hips. And her hips were angled like that of a chimp's, meaning she'd walk on all fours typically, like most chimps do. Could waddle for a bit like this, but usually walk on all fours. And of course, the guys who found that, they didn't like that. They wanted her hips to be angled so she could walk upright, like humans, so they could suggest she was an intermediate of some sort. So watch what a couple of guys did to make the evidence fit their preconceived ideas.
The ape that stood up, it was a revolutionary idea. We needed Owen Lovejoy's expertise again, because the evidence wasn't quite adding up. The knee looked human, but the shape of her hip didn't. Superficially, her hip resembled a chimpanzee's, which meant that Lucy couldn't possibly have walked like a modern human. But Lovejoy noticed something odd about the way the bones had been fossilized.
When I put the two parts of the pelvis together that we had, this part of the pelvis has pressed so hard and so completely into this one that it caused it to be broken into a series of individual pieces which were then fused together in later fossilization.
After Lucy died, some of her bones lying in the mud must have been crushed or broken, perhaps by animals browsing at the lakeshore.
This has caused the two bones, in fact, to fit together so well that they're in an anatomically impossible position.
The perfect fit was an illusion that made Lucy's hip bones seem to flare out like a chimp's. But all was not lost. Lovejoy decided he could restore the pelvis to its natural shape. He didn't want to tamper with the original, so he made a copy in plaster. He cut the damaged pieces out and put them back together the way they were before Lucy died. It was a tricky job, but after taking the kink out of the pelvis, it all fit together perfectly, like a...
Anybody else see that big hole right there? Just kind of wondering if it fit together perfectly. It doesn't quite fit. But
three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. As a result, the angle of the hip looks nothing like a chimp's, but a lot like ours.
You think, after you saw it down and bend it how you want to? And again, these guys are not dumb. They are smart fellows, but it's not a head issue. It is a heart issue. They want that evidence to fit their preconceived ideas, so they're not held accountable to a holy and just God. That's really what it's all about. And guys, there should be trillions of these in the fossil record. They should be everywhere, and there's only a handful that the evolutionists are willing to even try to argue over. And those are quickly shown to be invented intermediates based on fragments and false arrangement, just based on the idea of evolution being true. And by the way, arranging fossils or animals in a particular order does not prove a relationship. Even if you find them buried in a particular order, does not prove a relationship. If you found me later on buried on top of a hamster, it does not mean he's my grandpa. All right? It's not what it means. But for those who think placing things in a particular order proves some sort of relationship, I want to show you some of my research I've been doing. I've been trying to figure out the evolution of the fork because I love to eat. So I want to figure out how did we get the fork over millions of years. And so I figured, the fork had to start off as something like a knife, maybe 500 million years ago. Why a knife? Because that's the simplest form, right? Very streamlined, not a whole lot of changes, not a lot of variation in it. And then over the years, because of geological pressures and erosion, natural selection, what have you, the knife evolved into the spoon. Now you can see the correlations here. The handles are very similar all the way up to here. Then some changes, concave, convex structures of the spoon, indentions, but still very similar. Now, a little side note here, there used to be bigger spoons, but they all died out during a mass extinction event millions of years ago. So now we just have smaller spoons, all right? And then, over the years, because of more erosion, more natural selection over time, the spoon evolved into the fork. And guys, you can see the progression, right? I mean, right here, these are very similar up to this point. The grooves get evolved over time. They get deeper and deeper. There it is, the evolution of the fork. And I was so happy. But as I researched and really thought about it, you know what? I said, that is too big of a jump right there. There's got to be an intermediate. I'm missing something in between those two. And as I did my research, I was getting kind of hungry. Don't get ahead of me. And so I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken and placed my order. And the lady just handed me the missing link. What did she hand me? That's right, the spork. Discovered at Kentucky Fried Chicken, where all good things are discovered. Should be their new slogan. Amen to that indeed. So there it is, the clear progression. Isn't it beautiful, the evolution of the fork? You can even explain the so-called races. It's not hard to do. Hey, by the way, we're not doing this talk, but let me throw a little biblical truth at you. According to the Bible, we all come from what two people? Adam and Eve. If we are all descendants of one man and one woman, and we all come from them, how many races are there? One. It's called the human race. For the details of that, different talk, different time, but just keep that nugget in mind. But guys, here's the point. Just because I can take things and arrange them in a particular order and make a really cool, beautiful story about how that, these things came about, does that prove my story is true? Absolutely not. What do we actually observe in the fossil record? Well, we actually see billions of dead things that are buried in rock layers that were laid down by water all over the earth. And that's exactly what you expect to find from a global flood as described in Genesis 6 through 9. We talked about that last night in detail. So, summary evidence for this idea of macroevolution. We don't see it in the present. We don't see it in the fossil record. And on top of that, there's not even an observable mechanism to make it plausible in the present. We'll get to that here in a second. But I want you to notice something. These first four meanings to the word evolution are believed by faith. None of them have ever been observed. And actually, they all violate known laws of science. But the evolutionists believe them in spite of all the laws of science they break. Why? Because you got two choices, God's word or man's word. And sinful man does not want to be held accountable to a holy and just God. So they choose man's word. And that leads us to the last type of evolution. Some people call it microevolution. I don't like the title because it's kind of confusing. We just call it variation or speciation. This is the idea that you'll have variation within a kind. It's the idea that lizards will produce lizards. Variations, different sizes, different colors, but lizards are always still lizards. Do you know, I don't know if you know this, but in the Bible, this is exactly what the Bible does teach. In Genesis 1, 10 times, it says that God made distinct types of plants and animals to reproduce according to their kind. And the word kind is equal to about the family level, for the most part, in modern-day classification. So according to the Bible, God made the dog kind, and within the dog kind, we find dogs producing variations of what? Dogs. Elephants make variations of what? Elephants. Cats, variations of what? Unfortunately, right? But you get the idea. Variations within the kind. That's exactly what the Bible teaches. So whether you're talking about my big dog here, Samson, great day, or little dogs like the Chihuahua, do they count as dogs, Chihuahuas? Not really sure if they still count, but anyway, you get the idea. Tons of variation within the kind. Horses, you can make Zorses and Z-dongs. You can breed donkeys and zebras together because they're the same kind of animal. Here's a zebra who forgot his PJs, kind of sad, all right? Here's a Z-donk we have at the Creation Museum. Here's a Zorse. You can make Lepons if you want. You can breed lions and leopards because they're the same kind of animal. If you happen to like the old movie Napoleon Dynamite, I got good news for you. Ligers are real. You can breed lions and tigers together and make beautiful creatures. Why? Because they're the same kind of animal. So variations happen, no one argues, but these variations have limits. I mean, farmers have been trying to breed bigger pigs for a long time. Will they ever get a pig as big as Texas? No, there's a limit in there somewhere. I was just in Texas, and they will never get a pig that big. There's a limit in there. If there were not limits, why not make one as big as Texas? Or why not do this? I mean, wouldn't this be awesome? I would love to see a pig fly. If there were not limits, let's make it happen. But you can't do it because indeed there are limits. Roaches become resistant to pesticides through a loss of information, not a gain. But will they ever become resistant to a sledgehammer? Man, I hope not, all right? It's going to be a bad day if they do. So no one argues. There are variations. But what causes these variations? It's a good question. I'm glad you asked. Two major things cause these variations in our Genesis 3 fallen, cursed world. Natural selection and mutations. And guys, get this. No rational, informed person argues that things don't change. Of course they change. The two questions are, how much do they change, and which direction is that change going? Is it an onward, upward progression that would change, a microbe into a man, or is it just a mixing and typically a loss of information over time? What do we actually observe? And as we look at these two things, natural selection and mutations, here's what they must do to make macroevolution possible. For natural selection and mutations to lead to macroevolution, to change one kind into another, to change let's say a sea sponge into a man, what this process must do, hear me, is add brand new, complicated, specified genetic information over time. They must. Because think about it. For example, if you're going to change a dinosaur into a bird, you need brand new, specified, complicated genetic information, don't you? You need new information for new eyes, new lungs, new heart, new nervous system, new beak, new feathers, new bone structure, new everything. And that requires brand new, specified, complicated genetic information. If these two things do not add new information, they cannot lead to macroevolution, be biologically, genetically impossible. So let's take a look at these two things very quickly. Natural selection, most of us are familiar with the idea of survival of the fittest, which does not explain arrival of the fittest, but why things survive. It's the ability of organisms to adapt to their environment. It's the idea we get tons of variation because of the amazing amount of genetic variation inside living organisms. And the reason, guys, we can see so much variation within the dog kind, within humankind, so forth and so on, is because of the amazing amount of genetic information inside of us. We can't truly fathom it, but I'm going to try to give you an idea. It's been estimated that the number of atoms in the known universe is 10 to the 80th power. That's a 1 followed by 80 zeros. It is truly a number that we cannot really comprehend. But that number is nothing compared to this number because of the staggering amounts of genetic information inside human beings. It's been estimated that the possible number of children that one man and one woman could have, one at a time, without any of those two kids being genetically the same, is this number. 10 to the 2017th power. And you thought you had a big family. That is a big family. And guys, that is a lot of information. And remember, information always comes from a mind. And think about it. God put that kind of variability into the dog kind, into the finch kind, into humans as well. That's why we see so much variation. There's so much information inside of us. Now, to put it bluntly, can natural selection lead to macroevolution? The answer is no. And even most secular scientists would agree with this. Why? Because we all recognize natural selection does not add new information. It's just nature's quality control. It just kills the critters who are not fit to survive. That's all it does. I'll give you an example of this. Let's say you get two dogs who get off Noah's Ark, and they get married and have kids, and their kids get married and have kids, and their kids get married and have kids, and you end up with a typical homeschooling family. Now, as that population builds up and spreads out, different combinations of genes will survive better in different environments. But let's say the first two dogs to this population had genetic information for S, short hair, and Dale, long hair. Of course, it's more complicated than this, but the principles do hold true. They could have a whole bunch of different kids, right? They could pass on both short hair genes and make a dog with really short hair. They could pass on a short hair gene and a long hair gene and produce a dog with medium length hair, or pass on both long hair genes and make hairy. Everybody with me? It's not hard, right? So this population builds up with all these variations, and let's say a portion of the population goes up north where it's cold. Well, in that environment, the dogs with short hair and medium length hair are going to get cold, they're going to freeze, and then they will die. I tell you what, if that makes you sad, they can move away, all right? Either way, they're not there anymore, right? So after a while, in that environment, all you have is dogs with long hair, which on their own only produce dogs with, guess what? Long hair. That is natural selection in action. Now, through that process, did you add genetic information or lose it? You lost it. You lost the information for short hair in that population. That could be a problem later. Of course, dogs in another environment who might go where it's hot, in that environment, the dogs with medium length hair and long hair, they will overheat and die. Or again, move away if that makes you feel better. But after a while, you just have dogs with short hair, which on their own produce dogs with short hair. And again, that is a loss of information overall. And so through this process that some call natural selection, you get all sorts of different types of dogs. They were dogs, are dogs, will be dogs. It's not Darwinian evolution, it's simply dogs. And some say, and actually most secular scientists would agree, yeah, that's true. Natural selection can't do the job. But Brian, we know something that can. What is that thing? Mutations. Like according to this textbook, mutations are the natural source or the original source for variation within the kind. Mutations can give you the information you need to change a microbe into a man or a SpongeBob into a man, right? Mutations can do that. So what are mutations? Well, you might be surprised to know they are actually genetic information that has been damaged or changed. They are random. They are rare. They are mostly harmful, and they are very often lethal. Why? Well, because the great majority, like this secularist says, of mutations, well over 99% are harmful in some way, as is to be expected from accidental occurrences. Mutations are accidents within your genome. And typically, accidents don't produce anything good, all right? Let's say, you know what, you got a brand new flat screen TV, right, for Christmas, and you are taking it to your room because you're excited about this and you're about to plug it up to the Xbox One or whatever, and you're carrying it in down the hallway, and then you drop said new flat screen TV, and it hits the ground and becomes a bigger and better flat screen TV. Is that how it works? It'd be awesome if it was, right? That'd be sweet. I'd be dropping all sorts of stuff. But that's not how accidents work. They usually mess things up. As this honest evolutionist says, no matter how numerous they may be, mutations do not produce any kind of macroevolution. Why? Because they rearrange or delete existing genetic information. They do not add it. For example, using language. You could take the letters from Christmas, delete some of the letters, mix up some of the other letters, and make a whole bunch of words. Has, Matt, Sam, Ram, and so forth. But you would never get the words Xerox, zebra, or queen because the letters are not available. Same thing with mutations. It just works with what's already there. Give you a few examples of this. Here's a 5-legged bull. No new information, just a repeat of what he already had, detrimental to his health. Here's a short-legged sheep. That's actually a loss of information. And I got bad news, guys. Unfortunately, this is the first one the wolf is going to eat because you can't run but so fast with those little legs. I'm just saying. Mere's a 2-headed turtle. It's mutant. It's not ninja, but it's mutant, all right? I know. Here's some mutant flies. We did all sorts of mean things to fruit flies. We shot them with radiation, microwaved them, and made all sorts of mutations, but they were always inferior to a regular fruit fly. We just messed them up with our mutations. And the evolutionist says, wow, they evolved as far as they can go. It's a really bad conclusion, all right? Bottom line is not even one mutation has been observed that adds a little information. They all destroy information. None can lead to the idea of macroevolution. And the author of this quote anticipates the next question. Well, then, what about, bacteria become resistant to antibiotics? Isn't that macroevolution? He goes on to say, no, that the mutations that cause this resistance come from information loss, not gain. I'll give you one quick example of this. H. pylori, mean little bacteria, mean little critter that was doing some really bad stuff to humans. So we wanted to kill it. So here's what we did. We created an antibiotic that we knew it would absorb through its cell wall. Once it went through the cell wall, inside of HP, there were enzymes, and enzymes break things down. And we knew those enzymes would break down the antibiotic and release the poison that we had placed inside the antibiotic. So in other words, we sent it in there like a Trojan horse. Once it got inside, break it down, release the poison, we killed it from the inside out. It's pretty clever on our part. And it was working really, really well until the antibiotic ran into HP's mutant cousin. And HP's mutant cousin did not have the enzyme like all the other normal HP had. And at first, it was really sad about that because they made fun of him because he didn't have the enzyme that they had. And he was mocked and made fun of, and he was sad. But here's what happened. Since he didn't have the enzyme, when he absorbed the antibiotic through his cell wall, once it got inside, there was no enzyme to convert it to poison. So no enzyme, no poison, no death. The mutant cousin survives. Now, did he survive because he had more information or less? Less. He was missing the enzyme all the other ones had. And in normal circumstances, he'd be the first one to die off. But in that environment, with the antibiotic present, he survives and takes over the population, and all the normal ones die off. Again, through a mixing of information. So guys, bottom line is this. All we ever observe with natural selection mutations is a new combination of already existing genetic information. And usually less information than we started with, and that's the opposite of what you need for evolution to be plausible. And here's what's funny. Some evolutionists will say, well, hey, just give it enough time. Give it millions or billions of years, and these small changes will add up to big changes. But hear me. The changes we're talking about are losing information, not gaining. It's going in the wrong direction. Summarized very nicely by this quote from a secular scientist who says this, whoever thinks macroevolution can be made by mutations that lose information is like the merchant who lost a little money on every sale but thought he could make it up on volume. No matter how much time you give it, it does not help because it's losing, not gaining. It's going in the wrong direction. So to answer the question bluntly, do animals evolve? Well, define your terms. Are you talking about what some people call microevolution? We call it variation, speciation. Are you talking about the idea that lizards make lizards and dogs, and cats, so forth and so on? Absolutely. Nobody argues with that. Actually, biblical creationists thought of it first. We're on board with that, no problem. But if by evolution, do you mean the idea of macroevolution, that we all come from a common ancestor, that things evolved from fish to amphibians to reptiles and mammals, then absolutely no. The Big Bang, no. Why? Because none of those things have ever been observed, and they all break laws of science. And micro will not lead to macro because they're going in opposite directions. And guys, here's the thing. As I begin to wrap this session up, typically within our ministry, we don't break down micro versus macro or cosmic evolution. We just say the word evolution. And when we say the word, we mean the whole theory. But here's why I broke it down for you, because I want you to see something. I want you to see what's happening in our culture today to convince many, many generations that God's word is not true and it's wrong about history. They'll use an argument called a logical fallacy of equivocation. It's called a bait and switch. And here's the tactic. That's when, in the course of an argument, you use a word. And the first time you use that word, you mean one thing. And then later on in that same argument, you use that same word again, but this time you mean something totally different. And that's what happens here. You see, many times in textbooks, on National Geographic, on the Discovery Channel, if you watch Nova, as you're watching the media, here's what you're going to see over and over and over again. I want you to be aware. They're going to say, we know evolution is true. And the first time they say the word evolution, they're implying or meaning the whole theory. Macroevolution. We know the Big Bang is true. We know that planets came from random processes over millions of years. We know stellar evolution is true. We know SpongeBob evolved into a man. We know that whole theory is true. Well, how do you know? What's the evidence? Well, because we see evolution happening all the time. And the second time they say the word evolution, they really just mean microevolution. We see variations happen all the time. Look, these dogs made all these other sorts of dogs. That proves that nothing exploded and produced everything. Look, these finches produce other sorts of finches. That proves we all come from a common ancestor. It's bait and switch. But people buy it. And it causes them to doubt the credibility of God's word and many times reject the Bible as truth. I'll give you a good example of this from the video Evolution versus God. This was done by Ray Comfort. Love his stuff. But in this video, he went and he spoke at a couple college campuses. He was asking at secular campuses for evidence of what he calls Darwinian evolution. And when he says Darwinian evolution, he means macroevolution, micro up to a man. And he's talking to professors and students who are majoring in scientific fields. And when he asks for evidence of Darwinian evolution, all they ever give him are variations within a kind. Look, these fish make other sorts of fish. Or the finches that Darwin found made other sorts of finches. It's almost like they're indoctrinated. They keep saying the same thing over and over again. Check out this clip.
When you say change of kinds, you mean the evolution of one species from another or to another? Yes, we have that in action actually in the Galapagos.
Could you give me one instance?
Yes, we have an example from a group of birds called Darwin's finches.
You take a look at the difference between the finches on the islands that all started out. I mean, that's very, very observable.
But that's not Darwinian evolution. There's been no change of kinds. What do the finches become?
They become genetically new and anatomically new, recognizably different species.
So they're still finches?
Well, of course they're still finches, yes.
There's no change of kind.
Little birds that he had observed that...
What did they become?
Their beak shapes.
They're still birds?
Yes.
3 finches that turn into different types of birds.
They're still finches?
Well, for example, Darwin and his study on evolution of the birds on the island that he went on to there.
Their beaks changed?
Their beaks...
they're still birds. There's no change of kinds. That's within the kind.
Evolution on the beaks.
So that's called adaptation. It's not Darwinian evolution. There's no change of kinds. There's no different animal involved. I want something that shows me Darwin's belief in the change of kinds is scientific.
And just in case the finches did not convince you, this professor will convince you with the stickleback fish.
The scientific method must be observable and repeatable. So could you give me one piece of observable evidence for Darwinian evolution?
Okay, I would point to, as one great example is look at the genetics of the stickleback.
What's that?
So stickleback fish are a very interesting collection of species that were recently isolated after the end of the Ice Age.
What did they become?
They're various species of sticklebacks.
They stayed as fish?
Well, of course.
Well, of course. Bottom line is this: when you start with the wrong assumptions, when you abandon God's word, you can make some good observations but get the wrong conclusions. It reminded me of a group of scientists who wanted to see how high a frog could jump as they progressively cut off its legs one at a time. Which sounds mean, but it's for science, right? So they took a frog, they put him on the ground with all 4 legs, and they said, "Jump, frog," and he jumped 80 inches. They took that frog, cut off 1 leg, put him back on the ground with 3, and they said, "Jump, frog," and he jumped 70 inches. They took him, cut off another leg, put him back on the ground, and they said, "Jump, frog," and with 2 legs, he jumped 60 inches. They took that frog, cut off 1 more leg, put him back on the ground. They said, "Jump, frog," and that frog jumped 50 inches with 1 leg. That's pretty impressive. So they took that frog, cut off the last leg, put him back on the ground, and they said, "Jump, frog." Now they expected he might jump 40 inches based on progression of the data. Actual jump was 0. So they yelled louder, "Jump, frog." Frog still did not move. They yelled even louder, "Jump, frog." Frog did not move. They were baffled. So they tried the experiment again, with a new frog. And they got the same results every time. So they took all their data, they put it together, they said, "You know what? The frog jumped less as the legs were removed." Okay. That's a good observation, I guess. Therefore, we must conclude that a frog with no legs goes deaf. I'll wait for you. It's all right. Yeah. Nice. Hey, some of y'all get that later on. Don't worry about it. All right? No, bad conclusions. And guys, this is exactly what's happening within the scientific community today. There's some good observations regarding natural selection, mutations causing variation. Everybody agrees on that. But that's leading to the wrong conclusions that somehow these small changes that are losing information can somehow add up to big changes over time if you just give it enough time. Bad conclusion. What I hope you've noticed very simply from this is that real observational science confirms what we read in this book, that what we see in God's world confirms what we read in God's word. That when you stand on God's word, you can answer the skeptical questions of this age, defend your faith, and then proclaim his gospel with boldness. And truly, evolution does not line up with geological, biological, or genetic reality. It just does not happen. But when you stand on his word, you can be obedient to God's word. You see, 1 Peter 3:15, always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you if you feel like it for the hope that's in you. No, always be ready to give an answer for the hope that you have, period. It's not a suggestion, it is a command. When Jesus says go and make disciples, it wasn't, hey, if you feel like it, go make some disciples. It was, no, go. Actually, as you go and as you live, make disciples, preach the gospel. Stand on my word, answer these questions, defend the faith. That way you don't fall away like over 2/3 are, and then you can share God's gospel with boldness. And that's what this is all about, giving answers to get to the answer, Jesus Christ. Answering the skeptical questions of this age to show people God's word is true, to share with them the ultimate answer, Jesus Christ. Because let me tell you something, I know why you're here on earth. Can I tell you? You're here for 2 reasons, all of us. To know God and to make him known. That is why we exist. That's what all this is about. And that's why we want you to have these answers so you can proclaim and fulfill God's purpose for you. Got some stuff here for you as far as like what we brought with us. For those of you who might be interested, we got tons of resources here at the conference. This is an overall conference. We spoke yesterday. Me and Tommy will speak tonight. We got books like The Lie about why this is so important. Families, parents, teachers, this really gets into the meat of why this is important, dealing with biblical authority, answering these questions. We got the answers books. We talked about a lot of stuff in this session because I talk fast, but I can't talk about everything in an hour. There are so many other questions I'm sure you have. What about the dinosaurs? What about radiometric dating? What about the rock layers? What about Cain's wife? Where did the races come from? If we all come from Adam and Eve and there's just one race, how do we explain these variations? So forth and so on. Guys, there are great, solid, biblical, and scientific answers to all those questions. And they're not that hard. When you stand on God's word, you can answer those questions. Those books answer around 30 questions per book. Each chapter is a different question. It's a great way to answer pretty much every tough question in our culture today. We got those geared towards you guys as teens. So we answer those questions, but also deal with some of the other questions that you might be dealing with more independently in our culture today. What about gay marriage? And what about abortion and premarital sex? How do we understand these things from a biblical standpoint? Or how could God love someone as messed up as me? We talk about that stuff as well. I got those for younger kids. If you watched the Bill Nye Ken Ham debate and you wondered to yourself, what is the answer to every question Bill Nye brought up? Check that book out. It's got every answer in detail. It's not that hard. This book is a great book. It deals with questions we get as a ministry through email. We've answered very shortly and concisely, confound the critics. You can check that out. If you need a break from reading like I do from time to time, you can get some of our DVDs. The Answers DVDs. Each one answers around 10 to 15 different questions, and each answer is around 3 to 5 minutes long. So it's short, it's concise, it's snappy. It's good for kids, teens, and ADD adults all the way through, all right? We've got videos, 2 specials actually for you guys. We have the video called Science Confirms the Bible, and check this out. Both of these videos are phenomenal. They both cover a lot of information, cover multiple topics. This one's done by Ken Ham, who's our president and CEO from Australia. Got the cool Australian accent. He talks about DNA, genetics, rock layers, isotope dating in that talk. It's phenomenal. This one is 6 mini videos. It's covering multiple topics like radiometric dating, why is there death and suffering, what about the flood, Tower of Babel, so forth and so on. What about the races? And usually those things are around $14 a piece. This morning for you, they're $2. All right, these 2 videos right here. Check this out, and Science Confirms the Bible. You can buy any one of those 2 DVDs for $2, which is really nothing. So I encourage you to check that out. We got other videos like, what about the 8 men? That's a popular question. You can check that video out. We also have one other special for you, and that is the pocket guides. Typically, these things are $6 a piece, and they're on individual topics like 8 men or dinosaurs or rock layers or whatever. We're going to sell them to you for $1. All right, so you can get those if you would like. They're on the table out in the back. They're great resources, around 60 to 80 pages long, and they answer questions concisely, but in a good enough detail. You have a good perspective on the answer. And we got the YouTube special. You can buy any combination of books or DVDs we have here at these prices. The more you buy, the more you save. Check out the magazine if you get a chance. So many things we could check out. The Begin book, great for sharing the gospel. I encourage you to look at that. I've read most of the stuff we have back there. I've watched most of it. So if you got questions and need help kind of picking something out, let me know. I'll be glad to do that for you. You can go to the website. If you like free stuff, which I do, go to answersingenesis.org, mobile phone, computer, whatever, and there are thousands of free articles online, thousands of them. Videos you can check out for free as well. You can go find out about the ark. We're building the ark right now, a life-size replica of Noah's ark. And why are we doing this? To answer the questions of this age and share the gospel. That's what it's all about. Studies show around 2 million people a year will come to this thing and check out the ark and see this stuff. We want to share the gospel with those people. You can follow me or the other speakers on Facebook or Twitter, or I do a blog as well. You can follow us there. It should be done mid to late summer. This summer. There's no date on it just yet. We're getting there to a date. But you know how construction is. It's kind of, subjective. But we're looking mid to late summer. So hopefully this summer, and I'm telling you guys, it is ridiculous. We had our staff picnic at the site, which was unbelievable. And it is huge. It is gigantic. It's got 3 different levels. It's a warehouse that floats. I mean, ours won't literally float, but you get the idea, all right? It is huge. Over 100,000 square feet inside. And the exhibits are phenomenal. The people God's brought into our ministry to help make this happen it's just fun to watch God work. It's amazing what he can do. And so I look forward to that. I hope you guys can come for that. And I want to leave you guys with a story, actually. A story about a captain who was beloved by his sailors. And I like this story because it keeps the main thing. But he was just beloved by his sailors, and they could never sing his praises enough. And one day their ship came across another ship that had wrecked. And there were hundreds of people in the water. The water was really cold, so people were dying every moment. So the captain quickly gathered his men together and said, guys, listen, and people are dying every moment. Do everything you can. Use every resource we have available to save as many as possible. And his sailors just looked at him and said, wow, man, Captain, man, you are amazing. You know that? I mean, your love for those people and your passion and your leadership and the way you speak to us, you are so motivational and inspiring. You are incredible. We are so lucky that you're our captain. And he said, well, I appreciate that, but right now I need you to obey my instructions and save as many as possible. But you know what? Instead of doing that, instead of obeying his instructions, they just ignored those, and they just kept on singing his praises. You think about how crazy that idea actually sounds. How often do we do that very thing as Christians? We sing God's praises as we should, but then we ignore his instructions and ignore a lost and dying world around us. Guys, let's be prepared and willing to love the lost, to preach the gospel, to give an answer for the hope that we have, that God might use us to accomplish his will of drawing a lost and dying world to himself for his glory. Amen? Guys, thank you for your time. If you got questions, I'd love to chat with you guys out back once we get done. Thanks for coming.